All right, so we are under an hour countdown now from the acting Secret Service Director, Ronald Rowe, taking questions from the media. He will also release a summary, we are told, of the agency's internal report examining the security failures which led to the first assassination attempt on the former President Donald Trump. That was July 13th. It was Butler, Pennsylvania. You've heard me often say, we haven't spoken enough about that one. Let's find out what the answers are. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-host, Kayleigh McEnany, and also joining us today, Fox News correspondent Molly Line is here. Good to see you, Molly. And Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home, Cheryl Casoni. Good to see you, too. And Fox and Friends Weekend co-host Pete Hegseth is here. All right, give him a salute with your heart. Good to see you. All right, let's start with David Spunt. He's at the Department of Justice right now. David.
Well, hey, Harris, I'm going to head over to the Secret Service headquarters for that press conference, which begins in an hour. Acting Director Ron Rowe is expected to say he's going to throw out lots of the Secret Service playbook that may have worked or not worked, as we've seen over the past few years, and start completely new. He's also going to give us a 5-page summary of an internal report, sort of a look-in-the-mirror report of what the Secret Service did wrong in the days leading up to and on July 13th, when the former president was almost assassinated, when he was shot in the ear. An excerpt of Rowe's remarks. It's apparent he's ready to hold some accountable within the Secret Service. He says the mission assurance investigation findings have prompted the service to move into the accountability phase of the process. The Office of Professional Responsibility and Office of Integrity are reviewing the findings. The agency has among the most robust table of penalties in the federal government, and violations of policy will result in disciplinary action. Trump, Biden, and Harris all have counter snipers, drone counter surveillance, protective intel, and counter-assault teams. The difference is President Biden, as a sitting president, travels with Department of Defense communications, satellites, and, of course, the nuclear launch codes. But within the last 35, 40 minutes, the House voted unanimously, 405 were in the chamber to 0, to give presidential candidates the same protection as presidents. So candidates obviously won't have nuclear launch codes, Department of Defense communications, but they will have the exact same protection going forward if it passes the Senate, which it's supposed to, and if the White House, if the president signs it, which it sounds like he would. Harris.
All right, David Spunt, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So, Pete, let's talk about some of the deficiencies that we know of at the Secret Service. We know they're down at least 1,500 employees, and we found that out at the first hearing and only hearing, with now resigned Kimberly Cheadle atop the food chain at the Secret Service. Now we have the man who took her job about to speak. And what we know now is that they've not fired anybody. They've sidelined a few people.
They've sidelined a few people, and they've slow-walked a lot of other people on Capitol Hill that we've heard from recently who simply believe the public deserves to know. And Ronald Rowe, he had a big opportunity out the gate, and I think he's missed that opportunity big time. He had an opportunity to come out and be completely... He became more of a defensive company man too early. We'll see what this investigation says. You also have an agency facing the same things I reveal in my book, War on Warriors, which is CRT, gender stuff, going on inside, how they're picking and how they're processing, who they're hiring and who they're promoting. That should have nothing to do with Secret Service. It only should be a meritocracy focused on that. So this report is overdue. The attention, as you said, should have been on this and stayed on this. And I'm glad Capitol Hill has done that. I still don't have much faith that the Secret Service will be honest about how deep the failings are, though.
Yeah, I mean, Molly, it is unreal, surreal to think that we're not focused on the first assassination attempt of the nation's 45th president. And now we have a second one. So I don't want to get us too far afield where we lose sight of the importance of things. God forbid there be anything else happen. What, do we just lose sight of what happened 2 months ago?
And that's why it's been so frustrating to see the first look into the first assassination attempt, which was so important because the idea there would be to get to the bottom of things quickly to ensure that you don't see another assassination attempt. And before we even have this press conference, we see the rifle coming through the fence line in Florida. And you have to ask, was this assessed quickly enough to know what needed to be done to ensure that it didn't happen again? Because it has happened again. There's a second attempt that was already made on the former president's life. Now, it's nice to hear that they're talking about money and there's a little bit of agreement going on that things need to change. All well and good. But the question is, when do you get to the level where it's check the Bush's level of involvement in protecting this former president and any candidate? Because it would be really horrific for the country to have something happen. And that's
Again.
the point of, exactly. And that's the point of getting to the bottom of this quickly and not still waiting for answers. Many of the answers have come from Congress, from whistleblowers, and that needs to change as well.
From people's cell phones who thought they were just going to a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and now they have evidence on their phones, so on and so forth. You know, the thing that really disturbs me, you mentioned the money. So, Cheryl, 40% of resources for the budget of the USSS, Secret Service, is going to actually protecting people. This is what I learned from FBI's Chris Swecker last hour. He said that there's a lot of duplication and overlap with the FBI and other agencies for the other 60% where that money's going. So it all should be going to protecting everybody because other agencies could do where they're putting 60% of their money right now.
No, but Kimberly Chittle blames the staffing issue, saying that we're short 1,500 agents. Well, you've got the budget. Look, they've got a $3 billion plus budget right now. And we learned in an interview from Secretary Mayorkas, he wants more money. The answer is to throw more money at the problem. That is not the problem. It is the initiatives within the agency. It's also poor management and poor structure. And they do need new technology. I will say that. I would like to see them get better technology equipment, and that's part of the ask in the budget request from Mayorkas, and better transportation services. But honestly, if this was a company, and this is the way I look at a lot of government agencies and my role that I play on Fox Business, I'm telling you something, go to the top. This all starts from the top, and that is Mayorkas. And this is a management failure. So there's some great agents. There's lots of great agents out there. And I was so glad that former President Trump, when he was on Gutfeld, thanked the amazing agent that caught that rifle sticking out of a bush. It's amazing. I mean, so these are amazing individuals. They work really hard, but I think they're being mismanaged. I think it's a staffing problem.
And I've often wondered why they don't bring some veterans back from the United States Secret Service and their experience, even if it were just on a short-term, part-time basis. Bring them back as consultants so we can do better. They broke their promise when they said they were doing the first investigation so it wouldn't happen again. As Molly pointed out, they were wrong. They broke their promise. All right, so Chris Swecker called it the way that they're, from the FBI, Chris told me, the way they're handling this has been clunky, and that it's a hot wash investigation, just like nothing to see here.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. Senator Blumenthal said what he has learned about the happenings of Butler, Pennsylvania will leave you shocked and appalled. Those are the words of a Democratic senator. I believe that's the case. Look, we're going to hear about accountability today. That's laughable because Ronald Rowe was the deputy for Kim Cheadle, who was the head of the Secret Service during Butler, Pennsylvania. Kim Cheadle wasn't fired. Kim Cheadle got to resign and go off to wherever she's going to go, probably a great private sector job. The facts are this. Why did Donald Trump not have presidential level protection to begin with after one assassination attempt? I don't believe he did, because if he did, he would have had an emergency response team of dogs searching the bushes for people. There would have been a counter surveillance unit looking at the side streets, making sure that no one came in. And I am sick of hearing this word from Ronald Rowe. We keep hearing about a, quote, paradigm shift. During Monday's news conference, coming out of Butler, I have ordered a paradigm shift. Well, your paradigm shift allowed a guy to get 500 feet from the sitting president, or former president, I should say, with a rifle, with snacks from 1:59 a.m. to 1:31 p.m.
Oh, wow.
And today he's expected to use those same words. He's directing a paradigm shift. Well, here's the question. Does Donald J. Trump have time to wait for your paradigm shift?
Yeah.
The answer appears to be no.
Yeah. Pete, I want to get last words. You know, we talked about maybe some more technology, what Cheryl had said. I understand from what the administration has said and what the Secret Service are saying, now Trump has the exact same protection as Biden. So he would have those drones and all that technology. What are your thoughts about that? Shouldn't they have been there before?
Exactly. But does he? We all ask that question, but does he really? And did they really dig into whether or not there was animus and pushback to the request for additional resources from the Trump team before that first assassination? That deserves to be known. Because remember the initial denials from the Secret Service right away? Oh, no, they had exactly what they wanted. Well, no, they didn't. And every time you ask, you realize there were things that the Trump team requested which they did not receive, or people who on scene who were not Secret Service agents, they were HSI. So will we get a full accounting of how they were treated he was treated like a second-class candidate? Before that, we deserve to know those answers. There needs to be accountability for those decisions back then.
You know, one good receipt on how we know they weren't honest with us in the beginning is that they now have those in place.
Exactly.
So how can you put something into place that you said was already there? Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.